You're listening to ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio. This episode is brought to you by Maplytics by Inogic. Maplytics by Inogic is a leading certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geoanalytical mapping app. Maplytics empowers users with powerful map visualization and routing capabilities within Dynamics CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage the right customers at the right time. Inogic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV, delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality programming services. We thank Inogic for sponsoring ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio. Welcome to our post-Thanksgiving ProdCast. Did you have a good Thanksgiving, Matthew?
I had a fantastic Thanksgiving, Joel. It was my 6th year of doing a deep-fried turkey, and we are still 6 years injury-free with doing that deep-fried turkey.
Do you feel like you've gotten a good return on your investment in the deep-fat fryer?
Oh, I absolutely think so, though buying the oil for it on a regular basis is more expensive than you think.
Yeah.
But everyone loves the taste that we get out of it, and so it's well worth it. It has a good investment in the overall family. So
can you use the oil more than once? Like if you want to fry something else after Thanksgiving, or is it just one time thing?
Yeah, absolutely you can. So I end up buying a couple of gallons worth of oil to be able to do my turkey, and try as I might, I just don't do enough deep frying to be able to get good use out of that. And I have a hard time saving it for I've done 2 Thanksgivings with the same batch of oil, kind of saving it for the next year. You get some good flavoring that way, but I just can't. I don't feel right keeping it longer than that. I feel like I got to start fresh at some point.
Yeah. At least you haven't been the guy in the news that starts his garage on fire or something, or gone to the hospital yet. So that's that was, especially in the early years, my biggest fear is like, just don't let me burn something down or have a turkey go flying into the air. Yeah, absolutely. So a few episodes ago, we talked about personal mission statements. Have you done any work on your mission statement?
I tell you what, Joel, I've put in probably more effort into this little project or challenge I set out there than I ever expected to going into it. So I guess the answer is yes, I have.
Well, talk us through kind of your process and what you came up with, because I am still working on mine, so I could use some tips here.
Yeah, so here's where I went with this. Is I did some different reading. I mean, we had been talking about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and kind of the mission statement building in there. We'd talked a little bit about online advice and some other books and that kind of thing. And it felt like things really conflicted with each other and kind of how to approach it. And I took an open mind of I don't believe there is only one right way to be able to do this. It's what's going to resonate the most with me. So the first place I went to is I focused on what I want to be, what I want to do, and what my values are. So whatever I reflect in my personal mission statement, I wanted to make sure that it captured all of those different things.
Did you separate it out by role in your life? Father versus Microsoft employee versus whatever else? Or did you just go more general?
So as you'll hear as I get through some of this process, I did some of the holistic and I did some of the separation just to get those different perspectives in building it out. And there's the things that are kind of like that center of my life that that really end up finding their ways into the work stuff, the family stuff, the volunteering stuff, where do I spend my extra time that kind of come together. But there's also, other aspects to it that go beyond just that core center. They're driven from there. They tie back to it, but it's there's more to it than that. And there were a handful of things that I read along the way. One of them that I found was that I really like the language of personal philosophy around versus mission statement. Mission statement feels so businessy, and it can seem almost trite as you try to apply it to your personal life.
Exactly. It sounds like something you frame and put on the wall and never think about again.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think the labeling of it that way was doing it a disservice when, having some sort of mission that you're aligning different things in your life to seemed important. So that was kind of one of the first moments I was like, oh, that feels more almost more intentional in how I'm going to be doing that. Another one of the things that I came to along the way was kind of how do values fit into the overall personal mission statement. I've been trying to. I found myself struggling, going back and forth, looking at, should the values be like the central piece of that mission statement, or how do I incorporate those in there, and how do I narrow it down to the perfect few, if you will, and while at the same time not having it come across like a super generic, businessy statement, right?
Okay.
So then there was something else that I ran across, and as I took some notes on this, I forgot to write down which book or reading I got this from, but it was around this idea of trying to detect rather than invent your mission statement. And that was, I think it was actually 7 Habits that had that specific language around it. But this idea of taking time in really being able to build out what that core message is going to be. I felt like I kept time boxing myself in a very productivity focused kind of way. But I think that was working against me for a while as I would try to time box it and come out with something, and that again led into it feeling a little bit not quite right.
So instead of thinking hard about what is my mission, look at things you do and asking yourself what things bring you the most fulfillment, do you enjoy the most, and maybe what things don't you enjoy doing, to discover kind of what your mission is.
Yeah, exactly, and trying to have that self-reflective why, right? The why that sits behind each of those things that I am doing, and that bring me that joy and feel like they really align to what I'd want a mission to be.
Right. So I think when we talked about this first time, when I was talking about some things I thought were maybe part of my mission, you told me that you didn't think I had gone deep enough because it was more about what I do rather than why I do it, kind of like the start with why Simon Sinek thing. I read another book that made the point that you need to ask why 5 times to get to the real why.
Yeah.
So it's like you're too shallow and why do you like to do this? Kind of like when a kid, you're talking to a 5-year-old, they keep asking why to get, and you get deeper. Sometimes it gets really annoying too, but it's a good idea. It's annoying because it's hard, right? And especially like in the 5-year-old side of it, are they going to appreciate if you really get to that 5th level of why? When really they probably just don't want to eat their toast, and they keep asking why as a delay tactic. Yeah, exactly. I have the almost 3-year-old that does that same thing. Right. So then, one of the other things that I did is I tried. There is on the Covey website. There's a mission statement generator or kind of workbook tool that they have available. I mean, I'll go on record saying I really like the 7 Habits. I like a lot of the Covey materials, but it really did not work for me. I struggled to get any kind of value out of that mission statement builder. Was this something you pay for, or was this a free tool? No, they offer it as a free tool, and it's kind of like almost an interactive worksheet that you'll work with that helps identify some areas to focus ideas on what you're doing, and then it turns that around and spits out a collection of things that in their aggregate make the mission statement. But it felt very, very forced and did not work for me. I think part of it is just my personality. I wanted it to be a little more inspirational than what I felt I was getting out of that. Okay. So here's where I went with it, Joel. And this was kind of a turning point for me on how to really frame up
the things that go into my mission statement. And I think the last time we chatted, I'd mentioned I was reading a book called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And if I hadn't talked about it, it's by Greg McEwen. Not exactly sure how to pronounce that. But there was this concept that was introduced there, and it didn't really reflect on it for a long time, but it hit home with me so much, of this idea of building a mission statement, but doing it as in a very kind of consulting type of manner, a mission statement quadrant. So follow me, if you will. Okay. There's this idea of kind of bland mission statements and inspirational mission statements, and then there's the idea of kind of a general and a concrete mission statement. So you have those 2x2 matrix to be able to come up with things. So your bland general portion of your mission statement is really your values. I mean, that's where those fit, because they're very generic or general as you frame them up. They have some level of personal meaning, but on the page they come across as pretty bland to anybody that you're sharing that with.
What's an example of something that might be in that category?
Yeah, so for me, the three that I end up putting in there are curiosity, judiciousness, and patience. So curiosity, everything from just kind of an intellectual curiosity around figuring things out to wanting to understand more, digging into questions with people. Judiciousness is really trying to frame up this idea of don't waste stuff. Your resources, your time, your whatever are precious. Don't waste them. Be judicious with those resources. And then patience is the third one in, understanding how to, leverage patience as a value to be able to listen, understand before trying to just kind of move forward.
So does judiciousness also mean, for example, with possessions, thinking about the impact of acquiring something besides the cost? Like I'm thinking with like Black Friday, I saw some things that really tempted me to say, oh, that's a good deal. But then I thought about, okay, if I buy this, I got to find some place to put it in my house. I have to then probably buy some other stuff to use with it. So therefore, I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. That definitely falls into that, and that's one. For me, when I landed on that word in particular, I felt like it encapsulated so many of those different types of things of the precious resources, right? But I didn't want to have as one of the values, don't waste, or don't don't be wasteful in those kind of things.
Start spinning it into a positive rather than a don't do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So then, kind of continuing, you have the inspirational but still general, and this is the, if you think of it, it's like the mission vision side of a mission statement. So for me, what this came together as was a series of statements, and I help people realize they continue to grow and achieve, and even when they are faced with adversity. I achieve this by serving and giving to others and applying my strengths to the most important challenges. I remind people to have fun, and I operate like the wolf. And do you, when I say the wolf, do you know what reference I'm going for there, Joel?
Is that the Pulp Fiction wolf?
Absolutely, it is Winston the Wolf in Pulp Fiction. I'm not going to be the everything to everything to everybody. But
you're not cleaning up dead bodies or anything.
Right? That's right. But when I come in, I'm going to take care of business.
Okay, I got you.
But again, that stuff is very general, and it's tough to align specific goals to that, right?
Right.
So the other side of this quadrant is, you have your bland and inspirational again, but you have it nested in this idea of concrete things that you're looking toward. So for bland and concrete, those things are like the quarterly objectives. So, for me it was get back into work balance, having been out on parental leave for, almost a quarter. It's maintaining a home presence of how I'm going to be kind of working with my family and making sure that there's a balance that's kept there, and really driving towards that's where I had some more of the personal and professional split out in how I went at the mission statement there.
Okay. So what's the fourth quadrant then?
The fourth quadrant is that inspirational and concrete, and the way they term it in Essentialism is they call it essential intent, and it's really about taking that otherwise inspirational concept you have and putting some sort of concrete measures to it. And for this concrete side of it, again, I'm using those different lenses of the personal and the work to be able to filter those. So from a world / career side of things, I want to impact 100,000 people with the power of the Microsoft platform. I want to make available a collection of specific assets and best practices around tools, blogs, manifesting as tools, blogs, and videos, and make those available to people free to be able to consume. I want to use games like tabletop board games as a way to positively influence 10,000 lives in Minnesota. And then the last one was I want to have ensure that I'm having one special moment with each family member each week. So very, very concrete things that I can measure that I'm going toward. Things that they're lofty. They're not something you are that I'm going to accomplish over the course of a few weeks or a month or many of these even within a year. But there is this specificity around what it actually is. It's not just building assets. It's a specific set of assets. It's not just making time for family, but identifying these specific moments, which I'll be cataloging that through journals and so forth. The numbers of people through games and through the Microsoft platform. Those both align to both kind of business and personal interests I have in using the skill set I have to be able to help people achieve more. Right.
Okay. So is this what was the term used for it instead of mission statement? What do you call it?
Well, so it was a mission statement quadrant that they called it, which there's probably a sexier name to be able to put on top of that. But what was such a game changer for me is, in my mind, I didn't realize it until I saw this framework, but I would kind of seesaw between things of like, well, the values are really important, but having specific numbers attached to them is also important, and how am I going to be able to drive specific goals from these? And it just came to be a lot of stuff, and I needed a good way to organize that, right?
Right. So how do you, though, do that and still leave some room for serendipity or some room for something you haven't thought of yet? Another angle on this, your goal, one of those concrete goals, the people like your mom, aunt, uncle, whoever in your family you're spending time with, that'll be constant. But your job could change. You might have a new interest besides tabletop games that you discover. Yep. How do you not get so narrow in that concrete aspect that you don't shut the door for other opportunities?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, and I think as I found or as I learned as I went through this, there was a certain amount of vulnerability that I had to have in coming up with those concrete goals. That some of this stuff could change over time, and I could have there could be forces that take action in my life that push me to have to review some of those, and for the concrete goals, that's going to be okay. I mean, I don't expect any of those to change or radically change at any point in the near future. But by the same token, they all share this foundation in the more general side of that, inspirational category, because all of those, more concrete pieces to that align back to what I'm doing on the general side. So, the vulnerability or the risk that comes with that is the concrete side could change, especially, quarterly objective, probably not. I mean, it would take a very radical change for that to be impacted there. But on the other side, where it's looking at a time horizon of, years, I mean, there's some potential danger in that. But one of the things that they called out in Essentialism as they went through this was by making it that concrete, by associating that term with it, even if it was going to change, it makes it something that is much more. You feel like you can find ways to get there by making it be that concrete. The example they used in the book was a nonprofit organization that was trying to help build housing for the homeless or something along those lines. And they'd gone through several iterations of kind of mission statements as an organization that really fell flat. I mean, they felt like they were either too lofty because they weren't a worldwide organization. Their impact was much more local than that. But if they felt like if they had it be too local, it was tough to get people on board and excited and really understand what they were moving toward. And what they had in that essential intent was, and I will get the specific quote wrong, but it was something along the lines of, we will build, 240 units of, housing for the homeless, in 3 years or something like that. And it was just like the specificness, like it really spoke to the inspirational message of what they were trying to do. But all of a sudden, it's like, okay, 240 units. How are we going to do that? What can I do to help, make that happen within the organization? And the same is true in much in the way my brain works and how I break down goals is, having something more specific that I'm building toward, I can be a heck of a lot more productive if I have a sense of what that is. But it took breaking through that kind of barrier of vulnerability of, what if this does change? Is that okay? Am I okay with that?
Right. So in some ways it seems to me it's more about what you don't do than what you do. You have the things, your concrete and your things, but it helps you, like, when you have new options to do, to say, does this line up with my inspirational or even my concrete goals? Mm-hmm. And then choose what not to do. The problem is there's too many options for things you could do, all of which are good, but not all which line up. I think I would use the idea of building your brand professionally. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing to do, but you can go way overboard, and that can be kind of your driving thing, and that's when it becomes a bad thing, if it's taking away attention from your personal relationships and kind of an ego boost. But if you're using it to further your goals, then it's a good thing. Yeah, well, and I agree with that. And I went through a handful of years back where I tried to focus on a more of a personal branding strategy. I mean, it was a fad for a while there. And one of the things that I found refreshing in going through this exercise is that the things that I would have previously seen as like a personal brand building exercise on some of the assets and things that I want to build and share with the community. It's really rooted in that kind of general inspirational mission vision of helping people understand how they can grow, even when faced with adversity. And part of that is a lot of people just don't know what's out there or where to start. And I have,
I'm fortunate to have some tools to be able to, explore that and then share it out with the world on a platform that gets me global reach. I mean, that's really cool. That's part of an exciting mission for me personally.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. So, was there anything after going through this that you decided to either stop doing or do more of?
Yeah. So what's interesting is there were a couple of things that I did let go that didn't fit with this right now and just weren't providing that joy. One of them is actually something that we had talked about previously, and I still wholeheartedly support as an organization, but I actually dropped my Toastmasters membership.
Okay.
Having been a member for a long time, but when I look at kind of the how that aligns to what my mission is, that's not a skill that I'm needing to focus on at this point in time to be able to help promote that. So that was something I never would have thought I would drop that. At least not at this stage, but it just didn't align. So made a tough decision. That was about 3.5 weeks ago, about a month ago.
And it's something you can always come back to as well.
Absolutely, and from an educational perspective, I suspect I will go back. They have their Pathways program that's been rolling out over the course of the last couple of years that I think drives tremendous value. It's just not the educational resource I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Essentialism. I've added to my list.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, I tell you what, I don't know, how many, if any, folks who are out there have been, kind of playing along at home or toyed with this or whatever. Try using that quadrant. I know it made a huge difference for me. I don't know that it will for everybody, but definitely it was something that got me from this state of being like, I generally know what it is, but I can't actually write it down because it's stuck in my head. To no, I can actually look at that and start making some general directional decisions.
Yeah, I like it. Well, and it sounds less intimidating than just writing a mission statement too.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing: it gives you 4 discrete boxes to go start writing things in. And as I came back to like the values question, I could put them out there, and they can just live on their own, and I can have some detail that sits behind each of those and why they're important, and I can talk about it as I need to. But that doesn't have to be the definition of what my mission is.
It's been a while since we've done a "that's not productive" topic, or is that productive? I don't even know what we call that. That's that segment. Is that productive? And so I was thinking on the topic of travel. This is getting close to the holidays. A lot of people travel, and a lot of our listeners travel for work. The topics of airline points and TSA Precheck. I know different people that have different persuasions on that. I'm of the persuasion that TSA Precheck, if you travel regularly for work, is a good thing to pay for. However, I've heard people say that they think that the lines in TSA Precheck are getting just as long as the regular lines. So what do you think? Is TSA Precheck productive?
TSA Precheck is productive, unless you're flying through Midway Airport, in which case it depends on what hours of the day it will be productive.
Right.
No, I mean, so I'll say, joking aside, the program certainly isn't perfect. I got TSA Precheck as part of, I did Global Entry, which does the Canadian border and Mexican border, kind of fast pass through getting back into the U.S., which was nice. But I tell you, the ability to get in and get through lines, even if there is a line, it's still faster in the Precheck line. Even
not
if there are
people, take your shoes off, not having to get your laptop out of the bag. Most places, although some places do make you get it out still, but generally you can leave the laptop in the bag and just walk through. Yeah.
So I think absolutely productive. I'm curious, Joel. Do you agree?
I agree. Now I got a year membership in Clear through Delta,
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that's productive or not. One thing, there's nobody in the clear line generally, so you can generally go through. But the idea is you don't have to get out your boarding pass and show it to the TSA agent. You scan your fingers or your eyes. Half the time it won't scan my fingerprints for some. Maybe I have weird fingerprints or something, so I wind up having to get my thing out anyway. So I'm jury's still out on the clear. I don't think it's worth it. You have to pay for it. I think TSA Precheck is definitely worth it.
Yeah, I've heard similar complaints to clear, and the other thing is, even if you do clear, you get, at least from what I've seen, you end up getting funneled into a more normal line after you do the clear piece anyway. So you still end up having to wait through some form of line, which is
you generally do.
Kind of surprised me.
Now, what about on the airline? Do you put all your eggs in one basket and only fly one airline to maximize your points, or do you split between for shorter trips?
So I try to have the primary and then the backup. When I was traveling a ton, I traveled Southwest almost exclusively. Like if I could fly Southwest, I would just do it. It was nice because I ended up getting really familiar with their flight schedules, all the different airports I'd go through, and there was a certain amount of kind of productivity I got with doing that. I also got a companion pass, which meant my wife could travel for free anywhere I was going, which was very nice before we had kids. Now, at this point, I don't travel nearly as much as I used to. So I've been kind of primarily Delta because I'm in a Delta hub in Minneapolis.
Right.
But I mean, I'm not as staunch about that as I used to be when I was traveling all the time. How about you?
I do Delta the most, and that's what I have the most status on. But I'm not one that will limit myself to only one airline. If I can get there faster on American, I'll go American. And so I have some seniority with American, not as much as on Delta though. But I find I'm people that I work with may think I'm talking about them, and I probably am. But I find if you limit your options to one, that you go through a bunch of hoops that you wouldn't naturally do, and I feel like in some ways you're being gamed a little bit. It's a real life example of gamification of using a certain number of stars or a certain level, and giving you maybe the ability to get on a plane earlier or a higher chance of getting upgraded to first in some cases. But using that to control behavior. And, the contrarian in me likes to feel like I'm a little bit resistant to that. So, it is nice to get upgraded to first, but, I'm more the type that would sit in the back of the plane cramped in this tiny sardine seat for an hour and a half flight instead of limiting my options. If I can get home 2 hours earlier, I'll choose that option.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Even though I don't get the fancy wet cloth to wipe my face off with and get the choice of the snacks.
I tell you what, I saw a pretty cool story on LinkedIn, assuming it was legitimate, of somebody who was flying. They were like a top tier platinum on Delta. They were going to miss a flight. It was a personal flight with his wife, and they literally got taken off the initial connecting flight, ushered down to the tarmac, taken in a special Delta Mercedes across the tarmac to their next flight to be able to have them make it on the plane.
Wow.
And they took a picture, and the status you have to have. I mean, you must live in a plane.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, well, I think we're in agreement that TSA Precheck is worth it.
100%.
All right. Well, Matthew, have a productive week, and I'll get to work on my mission statement.
Perfect. Sounds good.
This has been ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio with Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. Follow Matthew on Twitter at @MCAnderson or on his blog, connectingthedata.com. Follow Joel Lindstrom on Twitter at Joel Lindstrom. ProdCast and the rest of the CRM Audio Network are available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and anywhere else fine podcasts are available. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.